we'll probably have some more people joining us here as schools get out and people get home. And hopefully, I know we've got much of our country under some extreme weather. And so hopefully everybody is staying safe and warm. But welcome to this week's CybHER Conversation. My name is Katie Shuck, and I am the CybHER Chief of Strategy. I've also got with me Kanthi Narukonda, who is CybHER's Chief of Operations, and we have the two CybHER co-founders, Drs. Ashley Podorodsky and Pam Rowland from Dakota State University. So we're thrilled to have them with us here today as well. Before I introduce today's speaker, I do want to just remind you that CybHER is a program out of Dakota State University where we work to empower, motivate, and educate girls in cybersecurity. So we do focus on girls, but our programs are open to both boys and girls from kindergarten through 12th grade. We do also invite you to visit our website at cybher.org to find out more about our programs and upcoming events that we have. But without further ado, I do want to introduce Carrie Roberts, who has been a mechanical engineer. She's been a penetration tester, both red teamer, blue teamer, and has a lot of experience with cybersecurity. And so I am going to hand the program over to Carrie, but if you have any questions at any point, please feel free to ask them via the Q&A that you'll find at the bottom of the screen. And as always, we do want to thank Peraton for this being a sponsor of our CybHER Conversations program. So Carrie, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you. I'm excited to tell my story about getting into InfoSec because I didn't start out in InfoSec, and then how I've recruited family and friends into the business. You can see my family, part of my family of hackers there, and then we'll open it up for questions. So I live in Idaho and I have 6 children, all boys but 5. And we like to ride motorcycles and 4-wheelers in the mountains in Idaho. And we also breed West Highland Terriers, those little cute white puppies up there. I spent, well, actually graduating from high school, I thought that I wanted to be a cabinet maker because I love to build things. I love tools. So I looked around and I couldn't find any sort of schools or training for being a cabinet maker. So I settled for going to college and becoming a mechanical engineer because I thought, well, they probably get to build a lot of things. So I did that, and I was a mechanical engineer for 8 years and I loved it. But one day, HP started laying off a lot of mechanical engineers in favor of computer scientists. And so our manager encouraged all of us to diversify our skill set, is what he said. And he offered to pay for each of us to take a programming class to see if we would like to get into programming. So I did that and I loved it. I ended up going back to school to get a master's degree in computer science. And then I came back to HP as a programmer with job security. So that was cool. So I did the switcheroo after being a mechanical engineer for 8 years into programming. I programmed PC applications, mobile applications for your phone. And then I got settled in as a web application developer, and that was a lot of fun. And just before my web application was going to be released, that I was the primary developer on, had written the majority of the code, was going to be released to production. My boss walked by and dropped a report on my desk and said, "Here, fix this stuff." And I picked it up, and what it was a security report on my application. And it had a lot of red on it and a lot of words like critical vulnerability on it that said my application was completely hackable pretty much everywhere. And it said it was vulnerable to cross-site scripting, SQL injection, and so on. And I couldn't hardly believe what I was reading. It said, if you, for example, if you type in something like or 1 equals 1 into one of the fields and then just tack onto the end some database command like drop tables, which would erase everything in the database, or even something to add something to the database with the SQL command, that they could completely control my database as a user, not an administrator. And I could hardly believe it. I went back to my development machine and I tried out what they said a hacker could do, and it was that easy. A hacker could completely control my database and any data in there that wasn't supposed to be seen by non-admin users. So I went home that night really with my head hung low and my shoulders dropped, and I powdered my way home to talk to my husband, tell him, oh my gosh, I just got destroyed at work today. My application is completely hackable, and I'm supposed to fix this stuff, and I don't know anything about it. And I just graduated 4 years ago with a master's, and why didn't they teach me anything about security? You know, if this is a big deal, how could they give me a master's degree and nobody ever mentioned security? So I was really bummed. My husband, and I told my husband, I can't be a developer clearly if I don't know about information security. And I'm an all or nothing kind of person. So I said, I'm either going to quit being a developer, or I'm going to embrace security and get comfortable with it and try to be some sort of an expert in it. And so I ended up, with his encouragement, doing that. I went back to school in 2010. Well, actually, at first, not school, just a conference. I went to kind of a 5-day class on information security kind of topics, application security. And it was awesome training. I loved it. And so I went back for another one. I ended up learning that the SANS Institute, I got certified certificates. I ended up learning that they offer a master's program where you take multiple of these 5- and 6-day classes, write some papers, get a bunch of certifications, and then you become a security expert. And so I wanted to become a certified security expert, kind of, just to conquer this original depressing day. And during that schooling, I learned about this idea of pen testing. It hadn't really occurred to me that the person who wrote the report against my application was somebody whose job it was to hack into things. So they had pen tested, or penetration tests. They had tried to break into my application, and they succeeded. And I thought, wow, that would be a great job. Instead of trying to make things work, you're just constantly trying to break everything. And you get paid for it. So I was like, that's it. I have to be a pen tester. The idea that I could get paid to hack into things and I won't go to jail just seemed like too much fun. And I did end up becoming a pen tester, where I even got to do physical pen tests where I break into buildings. I got trained in how to pick locks, and I had training materials at home. Then all my kids picked up how to do lock picking, and even my 3-year-old could pick a lock in about 5 seconds. Even though she didn't really know what she was doing, she followed the instructions and she could pick locks. It was pretty amazing. So I set my sights on being a pen tester and did anything I could to build my resume to get into that field. It reminded me of a movie called Sneakers from 1992, where a group's hired to break into a bank and steal all their money from their safe if they can, but it was all with the bank's approval. So they end up stealing all the money, and of course they give it back, and they get paid for telling the bank ways they could improve their security, so a real bad guy couldn't steal their money. And when they're going to get paid, the lady at the bank's typing up the check, and she's like, so people hire you to break into their places to make sure no one can break into their places? She was confused. And he says, yeah, that's exactly it. And that's what pen testing is. You're being hired to break into places, hack into places, companies, so you can help them not let the bad guys do it. So in 2014, after I finished my master's degree, or shortly before, I finished my master's in information security from the SANS Technology Institute. I got my first pen testing job with Black Hills Information Security. I worked in that for 3 years, and then I switched over to Walmart red team because I wanted to do red teaming full time, which red teaming is very similar to pen testing, just has a different focus. And so I did that. And after a couple of years of being a red teamer, which is, still on the offensive side, still trying to break in and hack things, I switched over to the defensive side, trying to protect Walmart's network, building defenses and alerts. And I wanted to do that to be more well-rounded. You can actually be a better offensive hacker if you understand the defense. And that's true of both sides. If you can learn both sides, you're better at it. So I've been doing that for a couple of years and enjoying that. That's missing. Oh, that's animated. So that was 2014. So 2015, my husband's noticed that I'm having way too much fun in my office. I'm like telling him, come in here, look what I just got into. Look, I'm in their banking system. I can see the CEO's salary. Oh my gosh, I shouldn't be seeing this and all this stuff. It was so fun. I was making good money, better money than I was making as a mechanical engineer. I had a flexible schedule. I was working remote. And he says, I wish I could do that. He was a high school online math teacher, and he was jealous and he wished he could do it. So I got all excited and I said, oh my gosh, you should do it. And he's like, I'm too old. It's too late for me. I'll never get there. And so he didn't say anything about it. And then, 3 months later, same thing. He's like, that's no fair. You have a way too fun job. You make good money. You have a flexible schedule. And I'm like, yes, do it. And he said, no, I'm too old. And then finally in 2016, he decided he would go back to school. Well, he looked into it and figured out it wouldn't take him that long to do it. He already had a bachelor's in engineering degree and a bachelor's in or master's in teaching so that he could teach school. So with those additional credits, he's able to go back in 2016. And in 2016, I guess he was like 40. So, I venture to say it's never too late. And so he went back and finished up or got a computer information technology degree with his other credits. It took him about 1.5 years school. And then I had him take 3 of those SANS trainings, those 5-6 day trainings at a conference that are really excellent. You end up getting certified after those. So he had 3 highly recognized industry certifications. And then in 2017, he actually took my position when I left Black Hills as a pen tester. And he's loved it since. He actually has never loved a job he's done before until then. I began to wonder if he's just a person who doesn't like jobs. And but ever since then, he's loved his job, and it's been amazing for us. And even last year, him and I started teaching information security classes online together. So that's been a great advancement and fun to do together. And let's see, we got a couple more minutes. I've also recruited my kids so far. My oldest has graduated in computer information technology, and she's a web app developer, and she knows things about information security as well, because you need to be a good web app developer. When we get together for Thanksgiving, we have some sessions where we go over SQL injection, cross-site scripting, and make sure that they're good developers. And then my other next daughter, she just graduated in December, same degree, same job. She got a full-time job making an amazing salary. Those are very well-paid industries. And then my son, who's 18, he's a sophomore at BYU, Idaho, and he's an intern at Black Hills Information Security. In the summers, when the kids are spending way too much time playing computer games or watching movies, I require them to do like Cameron had to do 2 hours of coding a day before he could play his computer games. And he was so motivated to play his computer games that he would do that. And that got him interested in coding. And he's actually going to be a software developer now. Just as a quick comparison, these fields pay very well. So you can see as a mechanical engineer, it's actually surprising to me because this wasn't true at the time I was going to college originally. But a pen tester and software development on average make more than a mechanical engineer. So it seems kind of odd because growing up, everybody just wanted to be a mechanical engineer to make a lot of money. And so both Darren and I have more than doubled our non-InfoSec salaries within 3 years of joining InfoSec. So we go into InfoSec brand new, and 3 years later, we're more than double what we were doing in our jobs before. So it's been a huge blessing to the family, life-changing, super fun. I've got to break into buildings, break into companies. I stay up late at night. Sometimes I'm like, all the blood goes out of my fingers and my hands are cold because I'm just so excited about what I'm doing. Definitely it's never too late to learn, to get into this, to switch. And that brings us to our 15 minutes in time for Q&A.
Carrie, that was awesome. I like your enthusiasm because a lot of people, they do their work. They don't particularly seem to be enjoying it. They're just trying to make ends meet. And I love that you're so excited about information security. And coming from a mechanical engineering background, you shifted, or it was more of a drastic change when you moved into computer science. So my question to you, this is more of my observation, how or are there any similarities between mechanical engineering and what you're doing now? Because you said you like to build things, and mechanical engineering would enable a little bit of that. But now that you are a blue teamer, do you get to build things anymore? Are there any similarities between the two?
The building things in computers, you're definitely building things all the time. You're making all the technology work together in the way you want it to work. So yes, but the building part that involves tools and toolboxes, not so much. I do miss, you know, my wrenches and my my powered drills. I've debated how to decorate my office back there instead of that. And I wanted to put something that meant something to me, something I'm passionate about. And I'm thinking about putting up a pegboard and putting all my favorite like hand tools hanging from them. And so maybe with that mixture, I'll feel like I'm kind of one with my tools still in computers.
Awesome. So if you hadn't chosen to go into computers, if you had chosen something else to do when your supervisor suggested you diversify your skills, what would you have chosen if not computers?
Not computers. Let's see. Well, there's things like mechanic stuff, because again, that's tools, but I actually like to make money too. And that's hard work. My brother's mechanic, you know, and his knuckles are always swollen and his fingers are always black. So I probably wouldn't have actually gone into that. So it probably still would have been something in engineering, maybe aerospace or even chemical engineering kind of thing. But that stuff, you know, I thrive on learning new stuff and having my brain just constantly like, how could I figure this out? How could I do that? So it has to be something that continuously challenges me. I like to keep, like in my job, I'm happy if about 80% at least of what I'm doing, I'm learning new, and only 20% is just doing this thing I've done 100 times before. So you want to have some level of repeating things you already know so that you don't feel like you're just drowning, and that you can provide value and stuff. But I like it to be swayed the other way, where it's like, well, I've never done that before, but I bet I could figure it out. So anything that pushes the limit on having to figure something out would be a direction I would go.
It's more like finding solutions to problems.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, even
I love that.
if my, you know, even if my husband comes to me and presents a problem like, oh my gosh, we're never going to be able to make this work. And I'm always kind of leaning the other direction, like, I bet there's something creative we can do. And that creativity, that desire to use creativity was something that really was an element of this hacking that really comes in handy. Because if you're trying to break into a system, it's good to be creative. Like maybe you're trying to get a user to click on something and you're like, how could I get them to click on it? Like for today, something came in the mail, something I ordered, and it came with this little credit card thing, and it says, watch this video before you use the product. I'm like, what? And it has you push this little thing in the corner, and it ends up, it's a little USB drive. And I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder how much it costs to make one of these, because if I was still on the red team, I would make some of these. Don't they look official? And I would have some made that relate to the company I'm testing. Like, plug this in to get your health insurance plan for the year if they're currently in open enrollment or something. And then I would go drop a bunch of these around the parking lot or mail some in to people. And then you can put files on these that run as soon as you plug them in. So it could run silently as soon as they plug it in. And then that would give me access to control their computer and they would never know it. So there's no way I'm plugging this thing into my computer, I can tell you that. But I'm always getting ideas like that. And I like how it uses your creativity.
And, you know, I've never plugged in stray flash drives or USB drives, but I'm always very, very curious. I'm like, what's in there? What caused them to leave it like randomly just lying around?
Yeah.
Why would they mail stuff like this? Are they testing us to see if we are smart enough not to plug them in? Or are they actively trying to destroy our networks or our laptops? I'm very curious, but
Yeah.
I never plug it in either. Gotta be safe. So in your career, you've been a mechanical engineer, then you've become a pen tester, then a red teamer, and then a blue teamer. So of all of these, what's your proudest achievement been?
Probably my favorite computer hack is a thing called password spraying. So you go online to like LinkedIn and you do a search that says, tell me everybody that works for company XYZ, because everybody says I'm so-and-so and I work for company XYZ. So you know a bunch of names, and then you take those names and you kind of run them through a script and you turn them into email addresses, because you know the company is like at xyz.com. And you know, you might be able to figure out it's like first initial last name or first initial dot last name, or even if you can't, you could just make a bunch of variations of these probably usernames for the company. And then you do something like find a portal online where employees log in, like Outlook web access, and then you use a script, and you, for all these users, maybe you come up with 3,000 potential usernames. For all these users, you use a script to guess just one password for all those 3,000 users. And you guess a likely password like winter 2021, because a lot of people in enterprises like to use a password that they can change every 3 months and still remember it. So if you do the month and year, you always know what your password is, even though it's always changing. So you do that. And if you do that against a list of 3,000 people on an enterprise, you'll get about 3% of the people. It'll work, and you'll get into their email account. And so password spraying, I've done a lot of work in making password spraying really more effective. And it never got old to get all that set up and push run and to watch it run, and then have something pop up that said, found a password for so-and-so, or, you know, correct password for so-and-so, and then to log in and see what you can find and how you can progress your attack from there. So probably proud of that work that I've done in the realm of password spraying.
Very interesting. I never knew people use seasons as passwords. Definitely something new. I've never heard of it, so it's very interesting.
Yeah, it might be new if you haven't worked for a large corporation, but in those environments, like the default policy is that they'll make you change your password every quarter. So it's very common in an enterprise.
True. Cool. So you found an interest in pen testing, and we have a question from our audience. How can a student, assume a young student like a middle school or a high school student, learn pen testing? Do you recommend any resources that they can use to gain more understanding, a little bit of experience in pen testing?
Yeah, there are so many free resources, and good free resources, especially for someone new. I just had a friend say, I might be interested in information security. Maybe I'll take your class, she said, but it's a paid class. I'm like, no, do not pay. If you're just figuring it out to see if you want to get started, do not pay money yet, because there's so much free stuff. I mean, you could spend a year learning all the stuff in the free stuff. So I don't have any specific links ready, but there's webcasts going on all the time. If you're on like social media, LinkedIn or Twitter, and you can start just following people in the industry and watch what they're posting. Those and I even post blog posts, and you can start learning about those resources. Or even if you Google a list of free pen testing tutorials, and there's a lot of stuff on Udemy and LinkedIn Learning and there's a lot of free stuff. It's just Googleable. And there's also fun challenges like CTFs, that stands for Capture the Flag, where you essentially try to somewhat hack into like a fake service. And if you can hack into it, you find this file and open it, and you copy the text out of it and paste it as the flag that you found as proof that you got into the system. There's a lot of free CTF platforms that you can do that will get you kind of hands on the keyboard. Wow, that's really cool that you could exploit a service by doing something like typing in or 1 = 1.
Awesome. The next question we have for you is, during your journey, have you had any mentors that have influenced you or helped you when you were kind of switching gears from mechanical to computers and then from computers to cyber?
Yeah, I had a really hard time switching from mechanical to computer science because I did an online computer science program, so distance learning. And so I knew no students there, and the teachers, I was going through the program very fast, and they weren't used to having students in their online program that needed like answers same day, next day kind of thing. And so basically I couldn't ask anybody any questions, and I had no connections at work to computer scientists or programmers. So I didn't have friends who were programmers. So that was the hardest thing I've ever done, is make it through that computer science program all on my own, with nobody to ask questions to. But then, and that would be different if you knew somebody or were doing a local school in person where you could get some answers quicker, or just doing it slower. I did full-time, it would have been 20 months, but I did it in 15, just by mistake. I signed up fast. I thought it was trimesters instead of semesters, or vice versa, whichever one ends up meaning I did it too fast. But so there are solutions to that. But then when I switched into InfoSec, there were a lot of mentors. A lot of the SANS instructors were really good. They would inspire me because they were just very, very technical. And, you know, little things like I would just watch them do the labs, and they would do these keyboard tricks that would, you know, switch from window to window or do things automatically. I'm like, so I'd be like, wait, how'd you just make that do that? So, I was, you know, and I would bug them during every break and lunch, and they would never have time to take a break or eat lunch when I was in their class, because I was always bugging them. But they inspired me, and, you know, they were supportive. So I had some mentors there that just really helped me along. And plus everyone who posts free stuff and supports free and open source projects. I'm part of the Atomic Red Team project. I'm one of the maintainers for that, which is free and open source library of scripted attacks. So you could run these scripted attacks to see how well you defend against them and report on it. And that's all free and open source. So anything like that has, and people who contribute to those have been an inspiration for me.
Awesome. We have a question from our audience. So when you are in the blue team, do you check the security of the apps that you make use of, or?
It takes, you know, a lot of time to do like a full security test on an app or a web app. And so what I do to minimize risk is, for one, at work, they've already approved certain apps and not approved apps. And so at work, I use virtual machines to do anything else that's not your basic stuff you have to do for work, like email and the few apps you use for work. And then I use a virtual machine, which is just a disposable, compartmentalized machine to do anything like visit Google search and visit every random hacking site in the world. And then I can, you know, that's isolated, and I can throw that away and restart it afresh anytime. And, you know, I don't care about the data on there. So I do that for work. And then for personal, I do really limit the applications I install, the Chrome extensions I install, because I'm like, do I really want it bad enough to risk the fact, and I kind of factor in how many millions of people are already using it. Because if there's 10 million people using it, it's more likely that a security researcher would spend time to find a vulnerability to get the fame for that than if there's only one person using it. So I try to use really commonly used stuff from reputable companies, but I don't personally test everything because I have a life I need to live too.
Our last question to you is, what advice would you give to the young people or anyone that's watching this session right now?
I would just give the advice that you can get anywhere with baby steps. So if you have some goal, like I'd love to be a pen tester, but oh my gosh, how would I ever do that? I probably can't do that. It's the same thing like with going to college. Like sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, 4 years, how could I, 4 years is never going to go by. But then 4 years later, you're like, wow, if I just would have started 4 years ago, I'd be there now. So I'm just like, just do it, sign up and do the begrudging thing of wake up, go to class, wake up, go to class, semester after semester. Time is going to go by. If you just keep marching along, you're going to get there. And so I just say, go for it and you'll make it. Just take baby steps and you'll get there.
That's wonderful advice. And we thank you so much for coming on to the CybHER Conversation to share all of your words of wisdom and your experience with these young students. So I am going to launch a poll for all of our attendees to fill out like I do every week. So if our attendees can fill that out, we greatly appreciate your responses. I also want to invite you back for next week's CybHER Conversation, which will be with Dr. Erica Combe, who is the lead forensic analyst at Dakota State University's DigForce Lab, which is the Digital Forensics for Cyber Enforcement Lab. She does digital forensic work on any type of digital device, cell phones, hard drives, computers, laptops, all of that. So somebody, if you're interested in digital forensics, you'll definitely want to miss. Also has some great experience she just completed her PhD too with some dark web research. So if you've got any interest in the dark web as well too, understanding that and the forensics behind it. Also follow us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for more information. And as I said at the beginning, make sure you go to our website to find out more about our upcoming programs and conversations. We're so glad you could join us and we wish you all a good night. Thank you, Carrie, for joining us too.
Yeah, thank you.